finally finished my rear suspension. I ordered my kit about 6 months ago, and I've been waiting on this metal bracket here ever since. So without that, I couldn't attach these lateral links, the gold parts, the shock, the axle, the brakes, and now that I finally have it, I was able to piece it all together and get a lot of parts off my shelf. So here's the driver rear corner, all assembled. I opted for an aftermarket fuel tank by Boyd. It's all aluminum, it's pretty light, it holds about 10 gallons. I got the optional rollover valve here to stop fuel from pouring out if you roll the car, which I'm sure you have some other problems then too. It didn't come with any fittings, which I didn't think about until I got it installed. So I had to track down a couple of 90-degree fittings on Summit, which is the site I used. But everything fits under this firewall pretty nicely. Another issue I had was my driver's side firewall, which is not installed. It's sitting over there. Lands on top of here before it can sit all the way down to the floor. So I'm currently working on raising the whole firewall up about 3/4 of an inch, mainly to clear this surface right there. The tank comes with an aftermarket fuel pump. It's an Aeromotive Stealth 340 pump. Plenty big for my use. I'm gonna have a mainly stock engine. I might tune it, nothing too crazy in my near future. And I opted for the aftermarket sensor. I guess the Subarus use 2 different fuel sensors for the fuel level gauge, and it's this complicated system to make it work outside of the Subaru fuel tank. So I got the universal one installed in this. As shipped by Boyd, the sensor is backwards, so the gauge would read empty when it's full, and the gauge would read full when the car is near empty. So I had to take the sensor out and reverse the little float that tells you the level of the fuel and put it back in the tank. Another problem I ran into was the Subaru fuel filter is in the tank in the 2007 WRX. And now that I'm using the Boyd tank, I didn't have room to use the Subaru stock fuel filter. So I actually am using an earlier WRX filter from an 02 to 04 WRX so that it can be mounted externally, as you see here. I got lucky with a bracket I found on Summit Racing, and I ordered it to be able to hold the canister, and when I was mounting it, I realized that it had the same spacing as the alternator bracket here. And this is actually the area where the AC compressor used to be on the engine, but that's no longer here on the 818, so I was able to put the bracket right there and reuse a couple empty holes and fill a gap on the engine, so I was pretty happy with that mounting. So the wiring has been an adventure so far. The WRX harness comes with over 40 pounds of wires and fuses and plastic boxes and brackets and connectors. It's pretty much a giant octopus of wires. So I went ahead and I stripped all the sheathing off there and protective covers, so all the wiring's exposed. That was able to give me some length on some of the components when I was mounting them. It wasn't constricted by all the wrapping that was on the harness originally. So all the stuff over there in the passenger footwell originally wanted to be mounted back here, somewhere on this back firewall, but I didn't really see a good spot to put it. So I ended up actually cutting a couple alternator wires, and that was the only thing keeping me from moving all that stuff up here. So I'm gonna mount this under the dashboard on the passenger side, or over here, kind of near the footwell. So I'll have to see how that lays out when I get more sheet metal on the interior. I also mounted my main ECU in the middle of my rear firewall. Instructions suggested you put it in the engine bay, back here somewhere, which I didn't like, and it didn't actually reach that well either, so I ended up mounting it on the other side of the firewall, the black firewall. I have two rear firewalls in the middle, so it'll be serviceable when I remove the silver firewall. And it's away from the heat of the engine a little bit. I finally got a battery, since I'll need to check the wiring and test different systems and make sure everything's working all right. So I went with an Optima red top. Just one of many purchases that are coming up. Eventually I'm gonna need to buy some seats. And today I just ordered my wheels and tires, so I'm sure that'll be in my next video. The brake lines and clutch are all plumbed and run. The brake master cylinder on the right, the clutch over here on the left. You have a proportioning valve in the middle to adjust the balance between the rear brakes and the front brakes, so you don't have one set locking up well before the other. That just allows you a little fine tuning of your braking balance. The brakes run down here along the car on the side. And they cross over. One runs over there to the passenger side. This is the clutch line running up the firewall. And then it kind of travels through the engine over here to work the slave cylinder for the clutch. I had an issue with the floor pans popping when you stepped in there. So to help with that, I glued and riveted in a heel plate made of 1/8 inch aluminum. And just reinforces the floor to keep it from popping in and out and making that loud thud sound. The Subaru charcoal canister is like the size of a cinder block. So I went to start mounting it and realized that it's ridiculous to try and use this. So I took a page from the Hot Rod guys and made my own out of a PVC coupler from Lowe's. Glued them together, filled it with activated carbon that I bought from Walmart, meant for an aquarium. And the purpose of this is just to regulate and filter the fumes from the gas tank. So on the stock one, there's a solenoid that lets some of the fumes go back through the engine and burn, and it's good for emissions and keeps your garage from smelling like gas. And this will do a similar thing. The fuel fumes will go through there, get trapped by the activated carbon, and keep the garage from stinking like fuel.